Hi everyone, thank you for joining me today. I am going to be flipping a table I purchased off of Facebook Market. It was a whole $12 and I'm really excited about it because it is round and finding a round piece can be challenging, especially at a good price point. I was going to sell this table, but my sister decided that she needed it for her living room, and so it will be going to her. So first step, business as usual. Get to cleaning. Use a degreaser in particular. I like Crud Cutter. That's what I'm using here. That's what I've used on previous pieces. Some people like to take Dawn with some warm soapy water. That also will clean up your piece really well. And you'll definitely want to go back over it with plain water if you are using Dawn. With the Crud Cutter, I don't feel like I have to go back over it with water. But see all that dirt? You always want to clean your pieces. And of course, step 2 is sanding. I always like to start with a low grit sandpaper, either 80 or 100 grit. It roughs up the piece a little more and allows the paint to stick. You can go over it again with a higher grit sandpaper, like a 120 or 220 even, to smooth out the roughness that was created. But again, you just want to prep your piece so that it can accept the paint. You want to take off any veneer that might be on it there, or any sealers that were used to maintain the piece initially. I am using a hand sander. I tried to show it to you, but according to my dad, it's over 20 years old. I am at home with my parents, so I'm using some of my dad's tools instead of my own. My sander is maybe 7 years old, and I got it off of Groupon. It's also Black & Decker, and it works actually very well. It actually is not Black & Decker, it's DeWalt. But any sander will do. You can also hand sand a piece this small. It really wouldn't take you very long, and it wouldn't require too much elbow grease to prep your piece. In addition to using the hand sander, I did take the sanding block from Dollar Tree to get into some of the more detailed areas and tinier spaces. And I also just folded some sandpaper in half to really help me get to the legs where I might have missed any sections. So after I sanded it all down, it is time to wipe it clean. You want to get off any dust. I just take some old water, or sink water really, and throw it on a paper towel, and I wipe her down. The paper towel doesn't have to be soaking wet. You could also use a damp cloth, but you just want to clean your piece. You definitely don't want any of the sand, grit, or debris that's left over to get caught up in your paint. You want a smooth finish, or as smooth a finish as you can get. So you want to prep your space. I am using some sawhorses to hold the table up off the ground as I don't have a solid surface for it to sit on. I'm going to protect the sawhorses with a disposable tarp from Dollar Tree. I do recommend you purchase your tarps there. You're going to throw them away anyway, or eventually. You might get 2 or 3 projects out of this piece, but over time on the plastic tarps, the paint actually flakes off and it can damage anything new that you're working on. Canvas tarps are nice as well, but again, they are fabric and paint bleeds through. So you have to think about that when you're working on anything in your space. I like the plastic ones because paint won't bleed through, and because they are so inexpensive, they are easily replaceable. So I just made sure my piece was extra clean, giving a little wipe down. I'm going to be using a Wagner paint sprayer. That's my father's. What's nice is it does have the bags with it, so you don't have to completely clean out the bucket that holds the paint. I'm using PPG paint. It's some leftover paint my dad had in the color Black Magic. I will link it down below if I can find it. I actually brought up some paint myself that was black as well. Just some primer actually. I told him to tint it black. I didn't have a specific color in mind, but if this didn't work, I was just going to use that. But this ended up working. It actually is more of a gray undertone, so it's more of a charcoal gray black, I guess you could say. But anyways, adding it in, giving it a little stir, making sure it's nice and mixed up. In this case, you don't have to water it down, but I found the paint to be thick for my piece, and you'll see after I spray the texture that was left. I didn't really care for that. So some paint sprayers do say to add water. In my case, I would recommend that you add a little bit, maybe 1/4 cup, not a lot, and stir that in just to help your paint come out smoother on your piece. Here I go. We're getting her painted. Paint came out pretty easily. It was really nice. Still, you definitely want to take your time. It's just like using a spray paint can, right? You want to step back a little bit, do nice even strokes, and work quickly so that you're not holding the paint over one area. So here's part of the problem. The paint came out rather thick and left a texture on the piece that I did not care for. It ran in a few places, and then as you saw earlier, there were areas that I tried to touch up with a brush, but they were drying so quickly it just made it hideous. So since I was already going to go over with a light sanding, I just decided to do a rougher sanding. and touch up the piece. So I'm going over it to smooth out the piece. Some of the paint is coming off because it didn't dry all the way. Fun times, trust me. And then of course where I had the brush strokes in my attempt to fix the piece, I also ended up sanding that as well. So there's a lot of sanding going on in this video, and it's honestly the worst part of any piece. Necessary, but not enjoyable. So I sanded it down again, cleaned up any marks and spots that I could, especially where the paint had come up. I wanted it to be smoother. I added a little bit of water to the paint, gave it a good stir to mix it in, and attempted to paint it again. However, no surprise to you, the paint wasn't coming out for me, or it wasn't enough or something. So I tried to add a little more and get as much as I could, and I ended up using the rest of this particular container and had to grab another one that my dad had as well, the same paint in the same color. Alright, step 5 is phone a friend. Find the person who owns the paint sprayer or making it out of the bed off of his nap, and help you out. So my dad came back out. This is me attempting to use it again, and then he finally got it to function properly. But again, it still left a texture that I just did not care for. And then unfortunately, some of the old paint that he had used it for was sliding out. You know, you really have to clean your paint sprayers and go overboard with the painting. So here's my dad. I'm sure he's going to appreciate being in this video, although it is brief. But he helped me get more paint on there. The coverage was great, but the texture was not desirable. So after he's done, I do end up letting it dry for a little bit, and you'll see how that excess paint just came out from some old paint he had left in there. Not on purpose, of course. Cleaning paint sprayers is certainly a chore, let me tell you. But that left a little mark, and then we had to go over it, and it was just, I wasn't happy with this at all. Even if it is for my sister, I wanted it to look good. So I ended up sanding it back down again, and then I'm just going to take the roller here, and I am going to roll the paint on to smooth out the surface as best I can. And I did this on both the top and bottom, I guess, cylinders or circles of the table to smooth it out. I even did a little bit on some of the legs as well. And then there were still some marks from when I had sanded it, because as you saw, some of the paint came up, and I wanted that to be as even as possible. So I've just been painting and repainting and sanding and repainting several times. So here you can see some of the marks, and then after much sanding and repainting, we finally got it even. My dad did help me sand it down a little more, and it looks so good. So now it's time for the details. I'm taking a used brush, an old brush. You can even just grab one from the Dollar Tree, something that you don't mind throwing away. I personally hate cleaning brushes, so if I can just use it for the necessary purposes and then get rid of it, that's what I prefer to do. I am cutting this down a bit just to make the edges a little bit rough, and I am going to take the spray paint there in the back. It's Krylon, the metallic collection. I purchased this at Michael's, and I am spraying it into a container. You can use gilding wax, you can use rub and buff, you can buy metallic paint. If you can find an acrylic, that would work as well. And I'm just dry brushing this on. You can take some paint and brush it onto a rag or a paper towel just to get some more off, but I was fine with the amount I was able to place on the actual table. And so I just brushed it on the edging and the sides of the legs to give it a little more detail. And of course, this is the second day that I'm working on this table after much drama, and it's a lot warmer outside, so I did put a hat on. Sun safety is really important. I usually wear sunscreen and my moisturizer with SPF 50, and sometimes I will put it on my arms and legs if they are fully exposed to the sun. But luckily, this part with the detailing went pretty quickly, so I wasn't outside for too long. And the best part about dry brushing is you can do this any way you like. I'm just giving it some light detailing. It actually kind of turned out to look like copper, but we were going for that rose gold effect. Since my sister's house has a lot of rose gold in it, it's her favorite metallic. But it turned out really good and gave the piece a nice aged look. Please make sure you like, share, and subscribe if you're enjoying this content. So we are nearing the end. You always want to seal your pieces. I am using the polyacrylic seal in a satin finish, and I am also putting it on with my Dixie Belle sponge. It just kind of made a smoother finish, especially with a round piece. Brushes I'm not a fan of on round pieces because you often end up seeing the brush strokes. In this case, the table had sat outside so long and gotten so hot that the polyacrylic didn't seal nicely, I guess you could say. That there was still some texture, of course, from the sponge. So on my second coat, I brought the piece indoors and I let it cool off, and then I was able to finish it. So now we can enjoy. I hope you all appreciate the work put in on this piece. My sister is very happy with it. Make sure you follow me on my Instagram at Fluttering Through as well. I have updates there, especially when I'm not able to post a video because I'm working on this beautiful piece of furniture. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!